Hello, welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by July. Can I do it by then? Who knows? So I'm talking about tonight's episode of Doctor Who, which aired on BBC One and Disney Plus. Please do remember that it is absolutely okay to like an episode, and it's absolutely okay to not like an episode. For me, I'm going to give this episode a 3 out of 10. I can't get it around my own head at how an episode could be worse than Boom, which I really didn't like very much at all, but better than Boom at the same time. I don't understand that in my own head. However, there are great points about this episode, some points that weren't so great, and some questions that I actually have. So don't worry, it's not all bad. I'm going to start off by saying that I actually love Regency era. So it was really good to have a historical piece of Doctor Who. It was great to have that. I feel like we haven't had that in ages. One of the original concepts behind Doctor Who was historical educational programs with a sci-fi base. And it's always a great call out to go back to classic Who settings and go right into the history. I like the ideas behind the shoulder, the shape shifters. Now, I think that they could have had more depth to them, more detail, more danger, more threat in general, just overall. Before I get into my bad points, they are a great concept. I wish we could have had more of it. I will say that the opening dialogue was a little bit hammy. It was a little bit cheesy and a bit almost stereotypical in some respects. However, what happens next with the alien, the Childer, taking over somebody else's body and essentially draining the life force and making them look like the image on the screen, that's a really, really good idea. I do wish they had pushed for more of that throughout the entire episode. We only get it a few times, but there are plenty of people there that they could have drained the life from. But overall, good concept. I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. I can't quite pinpoint it in general, but I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. So, how many times did we hear the word Bridgerton in this whole entire episode? 4, 5 times. There were references to Strictly. There were references to James Bond, Willy Wonka, Dungeons and Dragons, Notting Hill, Kylie. Don't get me wrong. I know that we have references to pop culture, but this was overkill, I think, in this particular episode. It was a bit too much. What did you think about the psychic earrings? I felt like the psychic earrings made it a little bit of a cop out, I guess you could say, for the ending that happens later. Doctor basically told Ruby what she needed to do. Did it make it a little bit predictable? What do you think? Now, here's the thing about Dot and Bubble from the last episode here. Um, there was a big thing about racism, xenophobia, classism, and all of that, but the racism being the most particular one. I have to say, you're in Regency era, 1813. This episode would have been a great time to address any racism. And it was briefly referenced, but it didn't go heavy on it. But you could have actually perhaps done a bit more here. I will have to say that some of the cinematography shots have been some of the best that I've actually seen this series. The shot of Ruby here, this looks really good. I really like this. I actually think period Regency would suit her as an actress overall. And of course, we have Susan Twist as the portrait. Now, I did throw a ridiculous theory out there I think it was on the Sensphere maybe, that they were going to Harry Potter style this particular portrait and have her moving. But of course, they didn't. And I'm kind of glad that they didn't. One of the things that I am going to talk about, obviously, is Rogue. He's very handsome. I will say that. He's a great actor. I do like him. I think he does very well as Rogue. Now, I'm going to talk about the cast in general. I think some of the diction was terrible here. Main cast, any supporting cast that had some of the lines. It I know my diction's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes there were some words that I couldn't quite pick up, so I had to go back with subtitles on. I have to say though, Shooty's Scottish accent was good. It was good. Of course, he lived in Scotland, so why wouldn't it be? But it was good. The flirting was overkill. It was overdone. It was all the way through the episode. Was it necessary? I found it incredibly jarring. Here's the thing about romance in Doctor Who. I haven't really ever enjoyed romance in Doctor Who. I didn't like it between Rose and the Doctor. I didn't like the unrequited love storyline. I know, boo-hoo, poor me. I was so relieved when Donna Noble came along and she was like, I ain't having none of that, mate. You ain't mating with me, sunshine. It was a relief. Yeah, I didn't like the River Song storyline or any of that, so I'm not a big fan of just romance in Doctor Who in general, and that's personal taste, I guess you could say. Some people will have loved this, and that's absolutely fine, and this was peppered all the way throughout the episode. I've put this on the screen. I screen capped this because I actually think that this is some of the best cinematography filming shots that we've had so far this series. The horror behind this to a child or a family with young people and children, this would terrify a child 100%. And I really just want to see more of it in Doctor Who. We haven't had enough of it this season. The Doctor goes to Rogue's ship. I have to say, the VFX on that ship was pretty cool, actually. I'm not going to lie. And I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. I've just realized that I forgot to screenshot it. I do apologize, but the VFX on it was really good. I really do like it. But the sonic screwdriver drives me absolutely flipping wild. It's one of my least favorite plot devices ever. I've always hated the sonic screwdriver, even in classics, so I'm never going to like it. But if you like the sonic screwdriver, that is, of course, absolutely fine. Why I don't like the sonic screwdriver is because it's a get out of jail free card. It makes the solving of issues too simple. This is really the first time in this episode where we see the sonic screwdriver actually be used to solve a problem. Overall, it is the solution to trapping in the childer. So I guess you could say really in this series so far that the sonic screwdriver hasn't been overused. They've tried not to use it in many respects for a lot of things. The psychic paper for flirting. What do you think about that? Throwing the psychic paper across the room to activate the past versions of the Doctor. What do you think about that? I must say the VFX for it was pretty pixelated. They made Jodie look older than what she actually is. When I watched it through the first time, I didn't notice, but when I watched it back the second time, I did notice that there was an extra face in there, and I couldn't work out at first who it was, and I had to keep going back and watching the same bit over and over again, and I'm like, "That's Richard E. Grant." And my first thought was, "Why the hell is Richard E. Grant there?" Richard E. Grant was not the Doctor in this timeline. He was the Great Intelligence. If you've not been exposed to the Schalke Doctor, which Richard E. Grant did, you will have only potentially have seen him as the Great Intelligence. So for those of you who have only seen him as the Great Intelligence, you'll be wondering, is the Doctor the Great Intelligence now? Which of course isn't a thing, because the Great Intelligence is a completely different entity. Now, of course, this is canonizing the Schalke Doctor, which was never canon originally to begin with, and it also helps create the multiverse. I feel like you would need to now expose the viewers to Richard E. Grant playing the Schalke Doctor on screen. You're going to have to do that. Now, I'm sure that Richard E. Grant wouldn't complain about coming in and doing that because he is a phenomenal actor. He's one of my favorites growing up. You're going to now have to take the time to explain that. And I know some people will comment below possibility that, well, if you have been following it, there's no reason for them to explain it. But you're going to have to, because it's going to potentially create big plot holes for people who have not been exposed to the Schalke Doctor. So yes, it threw me for a loop. I was like, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? Is that Richard E. Grant? Schalke Doctor, but why Schalke Doctor? Oh, multiverse. But he's the great intelligence. People will think, oh no, the great intelligence. Oh man, so this could really potentially shoot them in the foot if they don't pick up on that very quickly. I don't know how they will go around explaining it. I guess they will find a way, but I'm not going to write it for them, so I'm not going to make any suggestions. I'm also going to say this. Why are we singing songs from Willy Wonka? This was one of my favorite bits. In the top left-hand corner, I know the word okay. Absolutely brilliant. It was, and the reason why is because obviously they're in Regency England here. And before we actually know the true form of this character, which by this point I had actually already guessed, this would have been a really, really funny quirk to add into a Regency character, because she would be confused by the way Ruby talks. She would find her strange. She would be confused by her and maybe even want to try and copy her. And I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. Just like that moment, I was like, I like that bit. I really like that bit. However, that was brought down by calling them posh knobs. Listen, kids aren't stupid, but how far do we go with the language here? This is before the watershed. I didn't think, unless I've got this wrong, I didn't think swearing was allowed before the watershed. Right, so I have just looked up, and I will link this below for you. The word knob pre-watershed, it's considered strong language, generally unacceptable pre-watershed, seen as vulgar and distasteful by many, less problematic than when used in a humorous context, and generally considered slightly milder than cock. So what did you think of the use of that word, pre-watershed, in this context? I'll start by saying love is love. You end up loving who you love. You can't help who you fall in love with. I do feel like, though, that throughout this episode, the sexual agenda in it jarred the plot quite a lot. At this stage, I don't care enough about this character to worry about any kind of romance that's potentially happening here. And as I've said, I don't like romance in Doctor Who. And essentially, at this point, what they're doing is messaging. They're saying in this era, Regency, gay is bad. Gay is very bad. It would have caused a scandal, which is true. And then in today's world, it's fine. It's okay, which is also true. But this is just taking away from the action. It's taking away from the plot. I want the story about the Childer and how they're going to overcome the Childer to happen. I don't think they needed to dance. They could have gone into the middle, made themselves interesting by causing a ruckus of some kind, not this, of some other kind, got the Childer interested in them to lure them out. That's what they should have done. Sorry, they made very clear messaging here. I also got, just as a side note here, I also got Captain Von Trapp and Floreline Maria vibes from this dance. When they're dancing the Lenlo, if you've ever seen The Sound of Music. So they use it as a lure to bring the Childer out. Out of all of them, I would say that Emily's makeup is the best. I would say this is probably some of the better costume that we've had so far this series. I still would like to question, though, where exactly the money is going. One of the best plot points, I guess you could say, of this particular episode is, though, the, quote unquote, takeover of Ruby. You're led to believe that she has been drained of her life force, that she is dead. I like that. And I actually think they should have ran with it all the way. Now, the Doctor, of course, learns that Ruby has been taken over. And at this point, I was believing that Ruby had been taken over. We get this lovely little snippet, which we'd actually seen in the trailer prior to this, of her mum, Carla, asking the Doctor to make sure that she stays safe. And of course, the Doctor doesn't keep his word, or he believes that he doesn't keep his word. And that's a nice little bit, nice little throwback. I liked that bit. Why do we have a very weepy Doctor? Now, I'll give it to him here briefly, but later on again, he cries again. Why is it that he's so weepy? So I heard that his Doctor is supposed to be a vulnerable type of Doctor. However, in my opinion, when you're talking about vulnerability doesn't always mean crying. You can express vulnerability in different ways. So I guess it would depend on whether or not this was an acting choice, or if it was a director choice, or if it was in the script. But people are actually getting fed up with the crying. I'm just saying that there are other ways to show vulnerability and being sad. There are other ways to do it. It's not always crying. Now, I worked out immediately as that door was opened that this was the real Ruby. We should have been left guessing. And then when she's saying, Doctor, how long's a vexil? And then she's trying to convince him of all of this. I don't think he should have believed her. And he would have just gone, nope, and pressed that button. And then find out after that there's still a shoulder existing. And then we'll have Rogue take off that one shoulder in some way. And then it's left on a cliffhanger. What the heck is the Doctor going to do? Which will then make him have to resort to going to unit. It would have been brilliant, but they didn't do it. There's one thing that I've realized this series, I really do miss a great cliffhanger moment. We haven't had any this series. So then Ruby reveals that she goes into battle mode. And now I actually like what she was doing here, acting wise, that acting all surprised that she's been able to do those moves. However, I think it should have been much, much more intense, like full on battle mode. We didn't get it. The Doctor implied at the beginning that you shouldn't go into battle mode, but she goes into battle mode and it was just like, oh, dodge, oh, dodge, oh, dodge, wallop with the book. That's it. Job done. There's also a gaping plot hole with that. When we think that Ruby has been taken over and her life force has been drained, we hear a scream in the corridor and we see flashes of lightning. However, then when they explain it here, we don't get the tie-in from the plot point earlier. There is no scream. There is no massive flash of lightning to go with it. And I feel like that should have happened. Even if it means that the childer is looking in a mirror and she screams and lets off a bolt of lightning at the shape of her nose, at the shape of her beak, sorry. She could have just tied it in. So I'm going to talk about some camera angles here. These are some of my favorite camera angles that we've had all series in this episode alone. So the answer to saving the day is Rogue. The Doctor essentially has done the difficult stuff with the sonic screwdriver. I haven't talked about that, but earlier on he does actually zap. Rogue runs in, swipes up Emily, puts her in the triangle, triad. So he picks her up, he puts her in the holding cell, dumps her down, and he's trying to convince the Doctor that he has to send them on their way. And even Ruby is telling the Doctor that it doesn't matter. The Doctor cries because he can't sacrifice his friend, and true, it's a very, very difficult choice. But why are we having Rogue jump in, steal a kiss, push Ruby out, which, according to the plot, that can't happen, and save the day, essentially? Sacrifices himself because the Doctor can't do it. Why is that happening? Now, I know we've had Doctor Light episodes, okay, but I will ask in general, aside from 73 yards, why is it that the Doctor is not the one doing the saving? Okay, he does do it in some episodes, but in my opinion, he should be the one that is doing it in all. So he should be the one here figuring out a way to get Ruby out of there. Or he's saying, right, I will come and find you, and sends her off. You know, that kind of thing. But then that wouldn't make sense, I guess you could say, if that did happen, because technically it's an execution, isn't it? I also think that, again, the ending was, of course, too rushed. I think a 2-episode format, and this is me talking about from what I've seen, I've seen a lot of classic. The multi-episode format works a lot better in many respects. 4 is okay. 2 is good. It's just the endings get too rushed in one episode, I find. For me, that's just personal taste. Of course, if you don't mind it, then that's absolutely fine as well. And I will say one thing about the character of Rogue. I actually don't care enough about him at this present moment in time. I feel like he's supposed to be like Captain Jack. The thing is about Captain Jack, though, was that he did travel with the Doctor for a fair bit. I know there's theories going around that they think he is Captain Jack, but we're led to really want to care about this character, but we've only had one episode of him so far, whereas we had multiple episodes with Captain Jack. So when we thought Captain Jack was dead, it was a bit more sort of like, and you actually cared. And then the episode ends after that, and you see the Doctor put in Rogue's ring on at the end. So lots of great points about this episode, absolutely. But a lot of things about this episode also jarred for me. So I have some questions. How did Ruby know how to work these earrings, the psychic earrings? How did she know? How did the Doctor not know the lifespan of the Childer? But yet he's heard of them and he is aware that they are shapeshifters. Big question. They made it a huge deal about the pantheon of gods, but why are we not actually getting many pantheon of gods for the one who waits? What on earth have the Childer done to have a bounty hunter after them? This is a plot hole. I may have missed it, but I'm not sure that I did. But the Doctor says to Rogue about the Childer trying humans on for as outfits. But when did Rogue mention the Childer trying on people like outfits to the Doctor? I don't recall, so I might have missed it. If I've missed it, please let me know. I am sure that there are many, many other questions that are to be asked about this particular episode. What did you think of the episode? Remember, it is okay to like it and it is okay to not like it. Are there any questions that you have about this episode? Any theories that you might have about the future? What's going to happen in Doctor Who? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you would like to subscribe, you may also do so by clicking the subscribe button below. Chat about it, don't shout about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.